Welcome to the Financial Aid Podcast for George Fox University. My name is Jordan Nelson, and I am the Scholarship Resource Coordinator here at George Fox. Today, I'm going to be giving you some information on the second step of the scholarship process, determining which scholarships are most worth your time to apply for. If you haven't listened to our podcast on the first step, you can check that out on our financial aid webpage. So here's what you can expect from this podcast. I'll provide a brief overview of the scholarship process as a whole, and then talk about why you don't want to apply for every scholarship that you find. Then I'll spend the majority of our time today walking you through the 3 criteria you'll need to know in order to determine which scholarships you're most likely to win. So, first things first, an overview of the scholarship process. This is a 3-part strategy adapted from a book written by Jen and Kelly Tanab, who put themselves through Ivy League schools on external scholarships and then decided to write a book about it. They publish a new edition every year called the Ultimate Scholarship Book, if you're interested in picking one up for yourself. Step 1 covers how to find the most viable scholarship leads by asking the right people the right questions. Step 2 is a sorting step. You don't want to apply for every scholarship you find because it forces you to limit how much time you spend on any one scholarship. The better strategy is to spend more time on 2 to 3 scholarships rather than a little bit of time on 10 to 15 scholarships. Step 3 is where we think about how to market yourself to donors. Donors won't pick the most impressive candidate. They will choose the person who can most effectively communicate that he or she cares about the same things the donor cares about. You can find podcasts on Step 1 and Step 3 on the Financial Aid webpage. That brings us to, why bother sorting? Why not just apply for everything? I occasionally come across students who have been told that if they just apply for as many scholarships as possible, they'll eventually get something. Unfortunately, this actually isn't true. You have a finite amount of time to dedicate to scholarship applications. So if you're trying to apply to a large number of scholarships, you'll end up sacrificing quality for quantity, which is not a sound strategy. Not to mention, all the denials and wasted time generally deals a pretty big blow to students' motivations, and many just end up giving up. What I generally recommend to students is to spend 1 hour per week on the scholarship process, and that they continue to do it all year round. It's a myth that scholarships are only available during certain times of the year. Students are entering and exiting college fall, winter, spring, summer term, and donors offer scholarship opportunities all year round as well. You do not have to treat the scholarship search like it's a part-time job you do 5 to 10 hours per week. Don't make this process into a drudgery. You'll be doing this all year, so we want to protect you from burnout. So if you're only going to be spending an hour or 2 a week on the scholarship process, you'll want to be choosy about which applications you invest your time in. There are 3 basic criteria you'll want to use to help you determine which scholarships are the ones you're most likely to get. The first is how much you have in common with the donor in regards to their purpose and goals as an organization. Second is how many students you're competing with for the scholarship, which will indicate how much effort you need to put into distinguishing yourself from the competition. Third is the dollar amount of the scholarship and how much money you have the potential of getting in exchange for the effort that you're putting in. Starting with number 1, the first factor to look at when sorting scholarship leads is how closely your purpose and goals match that of the donating organization. Scholarships are offered by people who aren't necessarily interested in funding a student's education just for education's sake. The organization is trying to make a positive impact on a specific field, people group, community, industry, etc. And they are going to fund the education of someone who is not just going to get a degree, but someone who is specifically going to use their degree to care for the same things or the same people that the organization is caring for. That means what you care about has to match up with what they care about if you have any hopes of getting the scholarship. Simply being an impressive student with lots of extracurriculars and good grades really doesn't mean much if you can't demonstrate that you're going to use that potential to make a positive impact in the same field that the donor is trying to make a positive impact in. But first, you have to be able to determine what the donor cares about by conducting a little research. Here's an example of a scholarship one of my graduate students worked on. It's a travel therapy scholarship for people going into the physical therapy field. The goal is to find any key words the company uses consistently and any important principles they're trying to promote. You can generally gather some basic information by scanning an organization's about or info page online and watching any videos that they might have on their website. You can also run a Google search for any recent news articles and see what people are saying about them and what they're drawing attention to. If after a cursory glance, it seems like they're not a very good fit, move on to review another scholarship lead. If they do seem like a potential fit, though, you'll want to dig a little deeper. The fastest and easiest way to gather useful information on an organization and scholarship committee is to contact the scholarship coordinator. Most scholarship applications will have some kind of contact information listed, so you can ask questions if you have them. Please utilize this resource. There's a good chance whoever you talk to will actually be on the scholarship committee. And if the organization doesn't have much of an online presence, as you'll find with a lot of the lower level local scholarships, this is going to be one of the only ways to get information about them. So, here are some quick questions to ask. What are their values? Or in other words, what do they care about? Or who do they care about? Then you'll move on to what their goals are. There are a lot of people and organizations that care about the same things, but they have different goals and methods. So, what is the organization's end game? What do they think the solution to the problem is? And finally, what kinds of projects are they working on? What are their methods that they're using to accomplish their goal? How are they getting done what needs to get done? The answers to these questions will tell you how much you and your donor have in common, which is what you'll need to determine how good of a match you actually are. The second criteria you'll want to take into account is how many people you're competing with for the scholarship. Generally, this can be estimated based on the reach of the organization offering the scholarship. Organizations operating at the city or county level generally have a small application pool. This also extends to individual city or county level chapters of national organizations. I generally don't recommend applying for anything above the state level because of the sheer number of applicants you'll be competing with. The only exception is if you're applying to a very niche scholarship that only applies to a small number of people. The only safe way to know for sure how stiff the competition is to call or email and ask. So be sure to utilize that contact information for the scholarship. A quick call or a quick email will eliminate all of the guesswork. The final factor to take into account when sorting scholarship leads is the amount of the scholarship. Yes, you do want to consider the dollar amount when sorting, but never before the first two criteria. It is almost never worth it to apply for large scholarships offering $10,000 or more simply because of how many people you're competing with. The large scholarships are generally better advertised and attract more applicants. On the other hand, local donors that offer low competition scholarships can generally only afford to award $500 to $2,000 per scholarship. This is not necessarily a bad thing, though, since these scholarships are also available in greater quantities and are less competitive. Students are far more likely to win multiple small scholarships that add up to $10,000 than they are to win one or two $5,000 or $10,000 scholarships. So to recap, you'll want to use 3 factors to sort and prioritize the scholarship leads you find. First and foremost, make sure you know what exactly you have in common with the donor in regards to their purpose and goals. Second, always double check how many students you'll need to compete against. And finally, take into consideration how much money you have the potential of getting in exchange for the amount of effort that you're putting into the application. Once you've identified the applications it's worth your time to compete for, you'll want to check out our Step 3 podcast, where we discuss how to determine what the donor needs to hear and then how to communicate that effectively. You can find that podcast on our financial aid webpage. This has been Jordan Nelson on the George Fox Financial Aid Podcast. Thanks for joining me today, and good luck sorting those scholarships.